G'day! In this video, we are going to preview the Scourge of Ghyran rules for Kruleboyz. Scourge of Ghyran is offering each faction a series of seasonal rules that will be match play legal for the General's Handbook upcoming Season 25-26. Looking at what you have gained from the murky depths of the swamp, Kruleboyz have gained 2 new battle formations, the introduction of a brand new monstrous set of traits, as well as 2 alternative Warscrolls, one being the Swamp Boss Scumdrek, the other one being the Killer Boss on Great Gnashtooth. These units will have a separate pitch battle profile and can be substituted for their original Warscroll. In a list, you cannot include both the Scourge of Ghyran and the existing Warscroll for the same unit. You can swap it into an Army of Renown, just not into a Regiment of Renown. So let's look into the murky depths and see what has been bubbled from the swamps. Starting off with your 2 new battle formations that can be used instead of your existing battle formations like Middle Finger, Light Finger, and Trophy Finger. Swamp Horde Bullies will add an extra melee attack to a Kruleboyz unit that isn't Kragnos, based on a series of conditions that shouldn't be too hard to meet as long as your army is not based around all shooting. Now, this will be great for a force built around Gut Rippers and Monster Killers, supported by heroes, and then you can't leave home without a few little bolt boys behind the scenes. You could build into some serious damage dealing through Noisy Racket's Dirty Trick, getting that strike last, crit mortals from both the Gut Rippers and the Monster Killers, and then when you start adding up the extra attacks, you could be dealing some serious damage through the various combinations available to you. The other battle formation is the Bad-Mouthing Betas, which is going to be giving you a brand new Dirty Trick, which could be a blessing, could be a curse, because it will obviously make some of your later dirty tricks a little harder to achieve with that rolling difficulty level as you keep trying to trigger for it. So unlike other battle formations, this isn't a free bonus. It is another tool. You'll need to plan out which tricks you need to use, and it may even change if you're not already putting a hero in the terrain feature. You may need to think about how you can get that Hobknot hero or whatever it might be, putting something in that terrain feature just to increase your chances to hit the dirty trick. Anyway, in the shooting phase, this battle formation is going to give you access to a dirty trick that has no competition because you've got nothing else in the shooting phase. With the Bad-Mouthing Betas, you pick one of your units and then an enemy unit within 18 inches to be the target. Hopefully you pull off the dirty trick until the start of your next turn. Each time that unit makes a move ability and doesn't move closer to that particular Kruleboyz unit, they are going to suffer D6 mortal damage after the move's been resolved. This ability can be utilized in combination with the Sneaky Sneak and Dirty Trick to try to force a unit towards that freshly teleported Kruleboyz unit, or at least limit the ability to reposition against it. Now, this ability will trigger on a normal move, a retreat, a run, a charge, as well as some other faction-specific move abilities like Khorne's Murderlust ability. In addition to the new battle formations, you have gained access to a new set of enhancements called Monstrous Traits. Monstrous Traits are enhancements that can be only given to monsters, so units like your Killer Boss on Ripper Vulture, your Breaker Boss on Maya Brood, and Snatcher Boss on Sludge Draker Beast. Sneaky-In once per battle lets you use a normal move or retreat ability in the enemy hero phase. This has a lot of great uses, like being able to still redeploy in a subsequent movement phase. If it uses a normal move and not a retreat, it would make the unit eligible for a countercharge later in the turn. It can be used to get out of range of shooting attacks, especially if a ranged weapon has a low movement value, or maybe the unit gets a bunch of bonuses by not moving. Your Vulture with its 12-inch move value will likely get the most out of this monstrous trait, but in saying that, your Maya Brood with the high damage is also a great recipient to get into the fight a little sooner. Toughen will subtract 1 Ren from attacks that target the bearer. Now, this is a very strong enhancement, especially when you combine it with Mork's Cunning spell to essentially provide you that +2 to save when you consider the Ren movements around the board. Put it on a Maya Brute with its passive healing, and you get an incredibly survivable unit. Double down even further by taking the Egomaniac heroic trait for that 4+ ward when being supported by a Kruleboyz infantry unit to create this incredibly tough hero, especially when used alongside with the Basher Ash for that once per game debuff stacked on top. Mcryan essentially is a replacement for last season's prized beast abilities to gain that +1 to hit on companion weapons. Now, this is particularly strong on the Maya Brute, given how lethal its companion attacks are going to be in relation to the other Kruleboyz monsters, and its role as a flank bully or a trade piece is going to take Mcryan incredibly well. It is important to call out here that it is only for the companion weapons, so it's not going to affect the rider on top, and partially why I'm not suggesting the Ripper Vulture. Now, all 3 of these riders are going to have secondary damage to the mount, so it's not a huge disincentive that it's a companion weapon only. But if it's traits for you, you may want to consider taking the Trophy Finger Battle Formation to then also trigger the crit 2 hits on companion weapons. As I mentioned at the top of the video, there is also 2 alternative Warscrolls that can be used during the Scourge of Ghyran season. They are match play legal and they are optional, so you don't have to take this version. It's completely up to you. But let me call out what this Warscroll does and then see which one is right for you, or maybe a unit that you haven't used in the past is now a good candidate for your list in the future. Starting off with the Swamp Boss Scumdrek, what you'll notice is that the melee profile has been streamlined. The average damage is likely higher because it has lost that swingy D3+3 attacks, but it has been compensated by increasing the damage on multiple profiles, in addition to gaining crit mortal. The existing Warscroll has limited utility because its buffs were restricted to the Hobgrot Slitters, and it provided combat output bonuses to units that you weren't really building into. So it didn't quite make sense, at least for me. It has gained a bunch of new abilities like the Rigged Odds, which is going to help your army as a whole, especially when you look at how it's going to help you mitigate that unreliable nature of the core battle traits in your dirty tricks. This gives the Swamp Boss Scumdrek a automatic, unique, identifiable role in your army, because it's going to help you ensure that teleport to steal an objective. It's going to help you strike last on that enemy unit, or it's going to force that enemy to stay closer with that new battle formation that I spoke about with the shooting phase dirty trick. Now, it's worth calling out that the tokens can't be used to revert the first dirty trick that triggered the ability. So you'll notice that it does require you to fail one dirty trick, and then off the back of that, you then get these chips that you can then start triggering for other abilities, which is going to be really helpful, but it's not going to help you with that very first one. What I love is that it incentivizes using as many dirty tricks as possible in the first or even in the later rounds, even if you don't need the dirty tricks, because you're trying to stack up these betting chips to ensure that you have as many as you need and they're ready to go in those key turns, which is likely turn 2, turn 3. You don't need to use all your tokens that you've saved up at once, which gives you a lot of value and flexibility, especially if you're adding the bad mouthing betas dirty trick that we spoke about earlier, which is an easy way of generating those extra tokens, especially early on, and if your army's not super reliant on shooting. The Thrashing Tail Rampage is another ability that's going to help increase the damage output from this particular unit, especially when you remember that it's now gained the crit mortals on the companion attacks. I think when I mathed it out, it worked out to be about 10 mortal damage being inflicted if the Rampage is successful, and regardless of the other buffs you put onto the Scumdrek. It is going to prevent you, though, from splitting those attacks to multiple units, if you want to benefit from this rampage. And it's pretty unlikely to work against monsters and heroes who are single models, unless you're really good at rolling ones. The other alternative war scroll for the Scourge of Ghyran is the Killer Boss on Great Gnashtooth. Now, the Scourge of Ghyran war scroll has gained anti-hero on the boss skewer weapons, which is a nice little boost for the wounds that don't score the crit hits. It is going to turn the attacks against heroes into Ren 2, which can only be a good thing. The existing War Scroll had a somewhat limited buff that offered an extra 3 to the control score for a different friendly unit, which meant that it couldn't buff itself, and it did also have a +1 to hit aura with some objective conditions. Instead, if you take the Scourge of Ghyran War Scroll, this War Scroll has very clearly defined role, which is this ambushing hero hunter, and it's perfect for scoring flank objectives or just punishing an opponent with a weak flank by tapping into the rule here called prowling the flanks. It has some great synergies with the slippery scumbag heroic trait, giving it the ability to freely teleport in its own movement phase. This could make the killer boss a very extremely frustrating prospect to charge, given that it has the potential to retreat and then teleport away in its own turn. The profile is scary enough to be going out and clearing chaff and maybe going and hunting weaker heroes that will still require your attention. Maybe not necessarily going out taking those hero monsters, but definitely a great little piece on the flanks, going out and harassing and bullying. The other ability it's gained is called Drag Them Out, and that offers you more mobility and some very cheeky ways to avoid unfavorable combats. The killer boss could charge into a small infantry hero, even if it means tagging another maybe unit that's scarier than it. Maybe there's some abilities like Bodyguard or some synergy buffs being in combat zone and things like that. But you can use this ability to then pull that infantry hero away from that secondary unit and then safely kill the target. You might still die to that other bigger scary unit, but you then have the ability to isolate that particular hero should you need it. There are other tricks that you can use with Drag Them Out, like when you're contesting an objective and there is a hero sitting on it, you could then pull them off the objective. There's definitely a bunch of ways you can play around with this particular one, but it does play around with a whole bunch of movement shenanigans. The Scourge of Ghyran updates have given Kruleboyz more tricks. You have gained a new trick if you take the new battle formation. You will gain new monstrous traits should you want to take a new monster. And you have new alternative war scrolls for the Scumdrag and the Great Gnashtooth. Overall, I think there are some real positives here for Kruleboyz. Not everybody wants to or is leaning into those heavy shooting lists. And if you are, there's still something for you, but you can definitely see there's some themes kind of coming up and definitely much more love to the melee and the monster builds, bringing it up in its competitive nature. If you want to start theory crafting and list building, why not jump into the AOS Coach Discord server where we have dedicated spaces for Kruleboyz and all of the factions where people will be testing lists, playing with ideas, building around some of these new synergies. The link is down below in the episode description, and I can't wait to see what your pot grot is starting to cook up with these new set of rules. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AOS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a double one on a spellcast.